It's Depeche Mode, the podcast. I'm your host, Jon Justice, and welcome, fellow devotees. I hope you've had a fantastic week. I saw the coolest thing over the weekend. Avid Star Wars fan, I just wrapped up recording this week's A Star Wars Show podcast, and so if you don't subscribe to that and you enjoy Star Wars, I hope you'll go and check out that podcast as well. Just search for Jon, Jon Justice, and A Star Wars Show. You'll find it there. But somebody, and I don't remember which fan group it was. I think it might have been Depeche Mode Europe's group. But somebody had taken a portion of the Cover Me video of Dave Gahan in the spacesuit floating around and used it to wish everybody a happy May the 4th be with you, which was the sort of unofficial, official Star Wars Day that took place on Sunday, May the 4th of this past weekend. So it was really fun to see a crossing of these two elements in my life that I share an almost equal love of between Depeche Mode and Star Wars, and to see somebody go and combine that, I thought it was cool. I did see, there's a graphic that's been around for a long time, and it was Fletch, Martin, and Dave as some of the characters from Star Wars that I thought was cool. So on this week's episode, we're going to wrap up our dream set lists, including mine. I finally put my dream set list together. An easy task it was not. And we'll go through those that I have not had a chance to share as of late. A little bit of news this week, so let me go ahead and share what little has transpired within the Star Wars universe. So I was only made aware of this because I saw the posts as they were happening in almost real time, but the head of the Depeche Mode Global Fan Group, uber fan, probably a bigger fan than I am, if we're being honest, certainly owns more memorabilia from the band than I do. But my friend and yours, Rob Rom, was in Santa Barbara because Martin Gore was taking part in a pickleball tournament. Apparently, he played poorly, which I believe he even admitted that he didn't play pickleball very well. But he looked fantastic. I mean, he looked like he was in great health. Now, I know that Rob did post several photographs. He had an opportunity to chat a bit with Martin while he was there. Has not revealed what was said in that conversation, but apparently will be revealing that this weekend with another drink and chat, which will include Von George, also uber Depeche Mode fan and member of the band, no, not Muse. Now I forgot the band that Von George is a part of. My apologies. Anyways, but he's a fan. He's got his own Star Wars channel on YouTube as well. And I will also be joining on this drink and chat. So Rob had invited me to come on. I have not had the opportunity to meet Vaughn and very much looking forward to. And I believe Rob said that he would be talking about exactly what he had the opportunity to discuss with Martin. So as I mentioned, I don't know what was revealed yet. So I'm very much looking forward to that taking place at, I believe, noon on Saturday. I need to go into my text. We were texting back and forth, and I was hoping he would give up a little bit of the information, but he held it close to the chest. Yeah, I don't see it here. Yeah, I'm 99% sure it's going to be taking place at noon Pacific time on Saturday. So looking forward to that and finding out what Rob had the chance to talk with Martin about. Of course, we're just heading to a few weeks away from the premiere of the Depeche Mode film M, and I'm hoping that we'll get some information between now and then. But either way, this weekend we should be able to find out some of what Rob had to talk about with Martin. The photos were fantastic, and like I said, Martin looked like he was in really good health, so that was cool to see. Not that I expected anything different, but hadn't really seen him since he got off tour, and he looked like he was doing great. So I hadn't really mentioned this, but I guess it's because I hadn't done it yet. But as we've been doing the Dream Set List, and I titled this week's episode "Catching Up with the Dream Set List," as we'll go through those that I have not had a chance to share as of late. I had not put together my own dream set list, and I have to go back and thank Glenn1965 for suggesting this little exercise in the first place. Next week's episode, we're going to get into B-sides, and so if you want to send in your thoughts on your favorite B-sides, feel free to do so between now and then. But this was not an easy task, by the way, because there's so many options of songs that I want to hear. So I did my due diligence and tried to craft what I thought was the perfect playlist. So this is my Jon Justice Dream playlist. And I really put the thought into this in terms of the flow, the energy of the show. So we'll dive into it. And I imagined Mephisto as the instrumental opening music with curtains drawn, and I'm bringing back the curtains for my show, but the curtains drawn and hearing that piano from Mephisto as the band goes and takes to the stage. And I chose that song specifically because it has a bit of a pimp vibe, but as far as I know, has not been used live before. And it lent itself, and it lends itself, in my view, really nicely into the opening track for my dream show, and that would be If You Want. And I chose that track specifically because I wanted to start off with something old that was really going to excite the audience for the hardcore fans that were there to see the band. And with the lyrics of Working Week has come to its end, party time is here again. And I did something similar with the closing track for the final song of my dream set list. I just felt like it was the perfect opener and fits nicely with Mephisto. From there, we roll into Nothing. Want to keep the energy up. And that's a song that I absolutely love, even though I don't revisit it nearly as much as I should. And this would go back to sort of the straightforward album version, or the version that we ended up hearing on the Music for the Masses tour. Then we roll into Policy of Truth and World in My Eyes, the Cicada mix, which I thought would be a welcome change to what we typically hear of World in My Eyes, and something leaning into more of what the band has done with A Pain That I'm Used To, and the remix version that they do of that as opposed to the album version. From there, we roll into My Joy. You're welcome, Matt. And then we begin to slow things down a little bit by going into Blasphemous Rumors, followed up by Don't Say You Love Me, and Shake the Disease, the full version. And I like those mix of songs because we have the energy of World in My Eyes, and then My Joy has a strength to it that'll continue to carry the audience, and then we get into a more emotional place with some strong cinematic tracks like Blasphemous Rumors, Don't Say You Love Me, and then pick up the pace a little bit with Shake the Disease, going off of the way that it was performed in the full version from the Music for the Masses tour. And then here, we go into a Martin solo. I'm just giving Martin one solo here, and I want the full band for It Doesn't Matter. We could do it acoustic, we could do it piano, but I would love a fully produced album version of It Doesn't Matter for Martin, to give Dave a bit of a break. But then we're going to bring him back to the stage relatively quickly to follow up with I Am You off of Exciter, to pick up the pace a bit into Here Is the House, moving into Ghosts Again, which is paced almost exactly the same as Enjoy the Silence. I know this because when I'm walking around my studio and the halls of the radio station I work for, my walking pace is almost identical, and a perfect walking pace when listening to Ghosts Again or Enjoy the Silence. Then we move into the Spirit and Memento Mori remix version of Everything Counts, followed by Fly on the Windscreen. And then we wrap up the traditional set with Get Right With Me, another strong, relatively shorter track to sort of close the set out as the band goes and takes a break. Coming back for encore number one, we're treated with Songs of Faith and Devotion versions of Walking in My Shoes and Enjoy the Silence. The band would take a break, and then we would close out the concert with encore number two, starting with But Not Tonight, full band version, into Route 66 as sung by Martin on vocals. So this is where he gets his second track. And then we close things out with Insight off of Ultra. And I chose Insight specifically because on the one hand, I wanted to go out with something raucous. I'm kind of done with Never Let Me Down Again, even though I know it's required when it comes to the shows in terms of what it means for, the audience, right? And the whole waving of the arms like wheat, okay? But we've done that for decades now. And I like the fact of closing on a mid-tempo track, but just the lyrics at the end of that song, give love, gotta give love, the fire still burns. Just the messaging being sent at the end of that track to close out the show, to me, would be the best possible way to end the concert. So there you go. Thank you for this little bit of self-indulgence. That is my dream retrospective playlist. If you want nothing, Policy of Truth, World in My Eyes, My Joy, Blasphemous Rumors, Don't Say You Love Me, Shake the Disease, It Doesn't Matter, I Am You, Here Is the House, Ghost Again, Everything Counts, Fly on the Windscreen, Get Right With Me, Walking in My Shoes, Enjoy the Silence, But Not Tonight, Route 66, and Insight. All right, let's get back to some of your emails. And first, we start off with Courtney, who writes this. First off, I found your podcast in late 2023. It's been wonderful listening to someone other than myself talk about our favorite band. I always appreciate your perspectives. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for the kind words. My DM story, like most of ours, is pretty long, so I'll keep it to this. Their music became my lifelong companion when I first heard People Are People on K-Rock in the summer of '85 at a ripe old age of 9. I heard Martin sing the hook, and it was a done deal. Man, I love hearing from people that grew up in Southern California. I feel like we must have been running in the same circles. I mean, that certainly happened with Rob and I. It's been great listening to everyone's dream set list and the hows and whys they made the choices they did. I've been mulling over what I would choose, and my parameters would be today. What my parameters would be. Today, I put pen to paper to see what I've come up with, and I have to admit, I'm pretty surprised with my end result. So here's my loose guidelines, they write. Try to come up with at least one song per era. I tried from each album, but that didn't work out. Limit the usuals, as in I've never got to see them. If I never got to see them again past this show, what are the songs I would love to hear or never heard? Or songs that I love and I've only heard live once or twice. But also, do I have to keep this specific song because it wouldn't be a DM concert without it? Keep to the 20 songs, but I did fudge a bit with Night 2 alternatives. Follow their traditional concert tempo flow, which is what I did as well, structure. Make sure the songs build, keep the slower ones grouped together, and only 2 Martin songs plus a possible additional one for the encore. You know, it's funny. I think we all kind of followed these rules, right? Even if we didn't do it on a conscious level, we did it on a subconscious level. So here's Courtney's list. Intro would be Head Star. Into Rush, the spiritual guidance mix. Something to Do. Get the Balance Right, or a Night 2, Leave in Silence. Here is the House. Mercy in You. Boy, more love for Mercy in You again. Nothing, with the second night of being Halo. Hey, another hat tip for Nothing. Dangerous. It almost made my list, by the way. Just want to say that. Fly on the Windscreen, devotional tour mix. Martin segment, Sweetest Perfection, full track, not just Peter, accompanying. And then Home, album version, not the slower stripped down one that's often done live. Then we get back to Dave. In Your Room, the original Songs of Faith and Devotion version. Also, my favorite song of theirs ever, writes Courtney. Into Stripped, My Joy, another one for My Joy. Man, I hope, listen, Phil Gahan, I know you listen to the show, Philip. You got to tell Dave and Martin. My Joy needs more credit. We need a re-release of Songs of Faith and Devotion with Martin and Dave deciding where they want to put My Joy on the album, because it deserves to be there. Newborn and Shine on Night 2. Interesting. Then closing things out with Higher Love. Encore number 1, we get One Caress, Songs of Faith and Devotion version. Full Strings. Heaven. Interesting. Soothe My Soul. Shout out to Delta Machine. Encore number 2, It's No Good. And then we close out with Black Celebration, the ONIP mix. I couldn't believe how tough of a choice these all were, Courtney continues. In fact, I'm still kicking myself at the ones I left out. Walking in My Shoes, Sea of Sin, Pleasure Little Treasure, Puppets, Should Be Higher, and Chains. They've all been impossible choices, but only in the best way possible. Thank you for continuing to share everyone's lists. I hope everyone in your world is happy and well. We are. Cheers, Courtney. Thank you, Courtney. And you still living in Southern California? Out of curiosity. All right, let's go to, let's see here. Sorry, I didn't put the individuals' emails on top, so we need to go to, this comes from Lewis. And Lewis writes this. I hope you and your family are doing well. Apologies in advance for the length of this email. I've been an avid listener of the podcast since the build-up of Memento Mori in late 2022, and I look forward to catching up with you every Thursday. I've been close to emailing you quite a few times over the past couple of years, but I've always thought better of it, but here it goes. After you've read through this, you'll no doubt be hopeful of another few years of respite before I contact you again. I anticipate I may be one of your younger listeners. I'm 26 years old, but please don't hold that against me. Absolutely not. As I talked about last week, I appreciate our younger audience. And based in East Yorkshire, England, Depeche Mode have played a huge part of my life from growing up with my dad, who used to sing New Life to me when I was in my early years. Then developing my own music taste and taking a shine to songs like Everything Counts, People Are People, and Useless, which I had on homemade burned CDs containing my favorite songs when I was around 10 years old. I remember listening to Shake the Disease in my bedroom when I was 13 whilst exchanging messages with a girl that I absolutely adored at the time, and she asked me what I was doing. I told her that I was listening to a band she'd probably never heard of called Depeche Mode, only for her to tell me that her dad absolutely loves Depeche Mode. Fast forward to today, and I've now been with that girl for 12 years and married for nearly 2. Congratulations. Got a winner. The first time I went to her house after school, I was 14 years old. Her dad played his favorite DM track ever, Never Let Me Down Again, from downstairs whilst I was upstairs with his daughter. I remember hearing the intro vividly and smiling. It's a memory I'll never forget. My love for this band continued to grow through my teen years and into my 20s. As my father-in-law says, nobody makes music like Depeche Mode, and he's spot on. As a fan in my 20s, I know I've unfortunately missed a large part of the band's touring history, but I'm now trying to best make up for the lost time. Let's see here. I managed to attend 8 shows on the Memento Mori tour, starting with the Twickenham gig in June of 2023, also ending with the final concert of the tour in Cologne last April. I also managed to get stood at the barrier for 4 of the concerts. I still can't believe that, and those nights will be among the best of my life. The second O2 Arena show in London on January 27th with the setlist changes and the live debut of Before We Drown, plus the tour debuts of Somebody and Behind the Wheel, as well as the full band version of Home, was a phenomenal night. But of course, they all were. Anyway, I feel like I'm blabbing about me. It's just nice to be able to share my passion with someone who I'm sure will understand me. Absolutely. I'm already saving in the hope that the boys have got more in them, which, for what it's worth, I think, and I really, really hope that they do. Which brings me on to one of my reasons for emailing. Not a day has passed since the end of the tour I haven't thought about the prospect of future new music and touring. You could say they've left me empty and wanting more, and no doubt what I'm about to say will be probably miles away from what the truth is. Nice. Nevertheless, I'll throw my 2 pence in. I'm pretty sure I've watched and or listened to every interview both Dave and Martin did in the run-up to Memento Mori's release. And in one of those interviews with Dave, he mentioned that management were showing him spreadsheets of what the next 2 years looked like for the band. My theory is that in the run-up to Memento Mori, after going through the pandemic, losing Fletch so suddenly and having 6 years between albums and 5 years between tours, plus the fractious relationship between Dave and Martin during the recording of Spirit that only came to light when doing the press interviews for Memento Mori, that they weren't sure whether this would be their last album and tour. As a result, they had penciled in an extended tour to the back end of 2024, perhaps South America and Australia, and that is absolutely true. And again, going back to what I've heard from a few different sources was that those 4 unreleased tracks would have potentially come out if they had extended the tour, which they were talking about doing, and Dave and Martin decided not to. However, due to the success of the album, both critically and commercially, as well as with the fans, plus the success of the tour, and the clear enjoyment both Dave and Martin, as well as Pete and Christian, seemed to get from each night, they decided to collectively not overdo it and push it too far into the back end of 2024, but instead finish in April. Then allow themselves 12 to 18 months to rest and recuperate, spending time with their families and loved ones before going at it again sometime in late 25 or 26. With the announcement regarding the M film, delays being due to the initial anticipation that the previous tour may carry on, has also fed to further into my delusion. I know we love to speculate, and I would be curious to hear your thoughts. No, I actually, like I said, I think you're onto something here, and I'm really hoping that, as I mentioned before, I'm really hoping that perhaps Rob Rahm during the drinking chat on Saturday can maybe fill us in if Martin ended up, letting him know about any future plans for the band. I'm also emailing as I didn't want to miss the opportunity to share my dream set list for a retrospective tour. Now, I must admit a disclaimer in that these aren't necessarily my favorite DM tracks, so they are all outstanding in their own right. I've tried to base it purely off of what I would love to hear live, that I don't think the band has any real inclination to perform, plus a few bangers that you couldn't have a DM live show without, in my opinion, of course. So, here is the dream set list coming from Lewis. We will open up with an excerpt from Clean as the intro. Hope this isn't cheating. Use an instrumental version of Clean and rework it to extend to build the atmosphere for the night ahead. Going into Sea of Sin, this would be a brilliant track to see performed live. Rush. How Rush has been abandoned for over 30 years, I do not know. It would be a dream if it were performed on a future tour. Surrender, a song that many bands would have had as a lead single, a mere B-side for DM, but top quality. Suffer Well had to have at least one Dave-written track in the set list, bearing in mind the amount of airtime that's been given to a pain that I'm used to on the tour since touring The Angel. I'd love to see Suffer Well brought back in as a Playing the Angel representative. Here is The House, a crying shame this hasn't been performed by Dave since the Black Celebration tour. This would be a full band version as opposed to the Martin version from the World Violation tour. Nothing. Boy, another shout out for Nothing. Another song not touched in going on 40 years. Bring it back, boys. Don't Say You Love Me. We are brothers from another mother. Would love to have seen this on the Memento Mori tour. Would be interested to know whether there was any specific reason it wasn't performed despite it being rehearsed. Yeah, I don't know either. I wonder how difficult that song is to perform live and sing. I don't know. It's one of the ones off the album that I sing quite a bit to myself, but I don't know how difficult that one would be for Martin. For Dave, my bad. Number 9, Sweetest Perfection. Giving Dave his usual middle to a song slot reset would be a real pleasure to see the full band version of this. I can't believe it hasn't been performed by the band since World Violation. The Bottom Line, an underrated Martin track in my opinion. Again, full band version preferably. If Christian needs to take a quick break too, I'd gladly swap it out for It Doesn't Matter 2 with Martin and Pete. Then Policy of Truth, my first selection of a tour regular, a brilliant song to reintroduce Dave for the second half of the show. I Am You, look at that, love for I Am You, never performed live, how? Would be very interested to hear what Dave and Martin's view of Exciter is now, bearing in mind the songs from the album have rarely made any live appearances since the tour for the album. Then we go into Lie to Me, not performed since Some Great Reward. How is this song over 40 years old? Another that needs bringing back. Mercy in You, right up there with one of Dave's best vocals, in my opinion. Would love to see it 30 years on from Devotional. My Joy, my goodness. Again, a monster thumper of a track, but a mere B-side for DM, once again underlying their quality. think it would be great live. All That's Mine, probably coming in from even further than left field. My favorite from the Delta Machine B-sides. Another one written by Dave, but I feel like it would deliver really well live. Enjoyed the silence. Need I say more? Can't have a DM show without it. And then for the encore, The Sun and the Rainfall, an absolute masterpiece. This can't be left as last performed in 1983. It deserves a run out. Never Let Me Go, one of my favorites from Memento Mori, and was surprised it didn't make the cut for the live performances during the tour. Dave and Martin harmonizing for Watch Your Dreams Unfold in Color would be heavenly. And then 20, Never Let Me Down Again. No better way to end the night. A monumental track which takes on a life of its own live and could not be left out. Absolutely colossal. I'm sure you and the other listeners can sympathize with putting this together. Was far from straightforward. It could quite easily have been 20 different tracks, such as the quality and quantity of the Depeche Mode back catalog. I've probably changed my mind by the time I press send on the email. Just looking through my choices again, and it's probably definitely not a set list for the casual. I may have even lost some of the more ardent fans with a few of my choices or omissions. No, I think you're good. You didn't include a Holtefeed in there, so I think you're all right. Sorry, that's a bit of a callback to last week. Ultimately, they could announce a tour with the set list of What's Your Name 20 times, and I'd want to be there front and center. If you've managed to persevere and read through all of this, thank you so much for your time. You're very welcome. And if you've opted to read this out on the show, my sincere apologies to you and my fellow listeners. I can assure you it's nearly over. All the best to those trying to secure tickets to the M screenings at the Tribeca Film Festival. And my fingers crossed, we have even more positive news to come about the greatest band in the world in the coming months ahead. To Dave and Martin, a simple message that I think we all share. Come back to me. I'll be waiting patiently. Thanks again, John, and take care, Lewis. No, thank you, Lewis. That was quite enjoyable, and I'm glad that I read every word of it. All right. Got a few more here. Friend of the show, Dave Hudson. He writes this. In my last email, there might have been a misunderstanding about Depeche Mode feeling free to play any song they choose. I didn't mean that they should change the set list nightly, and that's not practical for them. I only meant that they should feel more freedom to choose any song in their catalog to be included in the predetermined set list. And my apologies, Dave, please. For misunderstanding what you meant in your previous email. Thank you so much for the clarification. That's on me. As far as my dream set list, Dave goes on to say, I'm just happy that they're still around to play anything live. If I put together a list, I think it'd be more practical than the typical devotee, in that I understand that a lot of people going to a show might be seeing them for the first time and would hope to hear some familiar songs. So I wouldn't want to compile a whole list comprised of B-sides like Ice Machine and In Your Memory, although that would be rad. At my first concert on the Black Celebration Tour at Berkeley's Greek Theater, I'll never forget the excitement of hearing Boys Say Go live. And on the Music for the Masses tour at the San Francisco Cow Palace, I was incredibly surprised when they played Pipeline. So if they would occasionally include a beloved or rarely or never played live track or two on the tour, it would be incredibly unforgettable. If I were crazy, I'd say something like, Now This Is Fun. Yes, absolutely. Now This Is Fun almost made it on my list. It was actually in the stack of songs that I had put on my master list, but inevitably I removed it. And now I want to put it back because I absolutely love that song. But realistically, Dave writes, I'd be happy if they brought any popular single like Shake the Disease, Dave's version, of course, back. That is, if we're lucky enough to get another tour. Really appreciate the show. Thanks, Dave Hudson. Thank you, Dave. All right, we got one more in our catching up with the Dream set list, and this comes from Chris Mayu, who writes this. Here is my perfect set list for the upcoming Corruption tour by that 80s synth band Duran Duran. Are they still going? I thought he died. Anyway, here it is. So here's the Depeche Mode list that he made. Corrupt, Stripped, Sweet as Perfection, Useless, I Feel Loved, nice inclusion, Should Be Higher, Enjoy the Silence, Sea of Sin, Behind the Wheel, Route 66, A Question of Time, It's No Good, I Want It All, Newborn, A Question of Lust, Waiting for the Night, I Am You, Barrel of a Gun, Suffer Well, and Higher Love. All great for singing, dancing, and jumping around with your DM family. No weird songs at the start that kill the mood, and no duff rubbish that you don't know the words to. Most of Spirit, because it's rubbish. Writes Chris. Love you, 2 exclamation points, Chris Mayu. I love you too, Chris. I love all you guys. You guys are fantastic. Just a side note on this. Observation. Very few picks for Behind the Wheel. Or Strangelove, for that matter. It's just interesting to me when you go back to think of the success of Music for the Masses. And, I mean, just how important those tracks were during that period, approaching the apex mountain of the band. And yet, not a lot of requests for those. Really interesting. This is one of those things where, man, again, having the opportunity to interview Dave or Martin and to toss at them how many times My Joy was chosen on our set list. Mercy in You got a lot of love. I Am You this week, surprisingly, as well. So some interesting standouts and some consistency in these set lists and things that I never would have predicted that you would have chosen. But it also was a reminder, too, of how many of us sort of have that same love of similar tracks for a band that has such an extensive playlist with some of those tracks. It's really interesting. You know, I think it speaks to the quality, as the previous email said, Lewis, of the band's material, but I would be curious to ask them if presented with, say, hey, there was a lot of mentions of Mercy in You, I Am You, and My Joy in these Dream set lists. Were these songs that the band wrestled with in terms of including them on the original albums? I'd also I'd be curious too how much knowledge they still retain of which tracks to choose. And I still, man, my curiosity is so high for those 4 unreleased tracks. I got a feeling that they're really strong tracks from Memento Mori that didn't make the album. So hopefully we'll be hearing them in the course of the next few months as we head into the release and promotion of M. It's a weird title, Depeche Mode M. Listen, that wraps up this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it. Lastly, if you want to support what I do here on the podcast, I'm also an author along with being a talk show host. But I've written a science fiction series. It's called EMBARK. After Earth faces its end, you'll follow pilots Taft, Katha, and their crew on a journey of survival across the galaxy as they fight for humanity's future. I wrote it out of my love of Star Wars and my love of Depeche Mode. The protagonist of the series, Taft Guardia, is a massive Depeche Mode fan in the year 2172, when the music of the 80s through the 2000s is nostalgic and popular among the characters of the story. It's a 7-book series, 2 trilogies, with a spin-off story in the middle that serves as book 4 and a continuation of the story as a whole. Fast-paced, action-packed science fiction adventure without any sort of agenda beyond just telling a thrilling science fiction story. It's a lot of fun to read. So if you enjoy science fiction, especially if you love Star Wars, and you like it to have some romance, a lot of really cool, interesting technology, indirect and direct references to Depeche Mode, and the songs and bands from my youth, EMBARK would be perfect for you. I wrote it for adults, but it is completely age appropriate for those 11 and older. Head on over to Amazon.com, no matter where you live on the planet. Search for EMBARK Book 1 today. Available in ebook, free on Kindle Unlimited, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. Again, Amazon.com, regardless of what country that you live in. Just search for EMBARK and Jon, Jon Justice. All right, until next week, I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, you are safe. God bless. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode. Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
Depeche Mode, the podcast.